All right, let's look at your 2D motion problem types. So the first one is just 2D motion, meaning it's moving in both the X and Y directions at the same time. So if that happens to you, you have to list both sets of variables, both the X and the Y set. Those two sets of variables will be linked with time. They'll have the same time value. And then you can use those same equations we used in 1D motion. Projectile motion, we're moving in the X direction, but we're in free fall specifically in the Y direction. So that means the acceleration in the X direction is 0 meters per second, meaning we have a constant velocity problem there. So V naught X is equal to Vx, and we're using equation 2 in that X direction. In the Y direction, we have an acceleration of negative 9.8 meters per second squared here on the surface of the Earth. Horizontal launch means we're initially moving horizontally, whether that's a baseball thrown horizontally, a bullet fired horizontally, a bow fired horizontally, or something just rolling off a ledge, sliding off a table. All of those qualify as a horizontal launch. That tells me the initial vertical velocity is 0. It's not moving up and down initially. So all of the initial velocity, V naught, is all in the X direction. So V naught is all in the X direction. Angled launch would be our next type. So horizontal launch, now we just fired an angle. It can be an angle up, it can be an angle down. You know it because it's launched at an angle though. If that does happen, you have to resolve the initial velocity into its components. So you have to use a little trig here to find the X and Y components of that initial velocity. If it is fired down, do remember you need a negative sign on that Y component. Max height problem, if it's a max height problem, because we're at the maximum height, that means the vertical velocity is 0 at the maximum height. Y naught equals Y. That means it starts and ends at the same height. Therefore, it's a Y naught equals Y problem. That means Y naught equals Y, which equals 0. The initial and final vertical velocities have opposite directions. So if it starts up, it ends going down. Also, the angle that it starts is the angle that it ends at if it's an angled launch situation instead of a straight up and down. And then the time to max height is half the total time. So that is your 2D motion problem types. Again, if you need to see how to do these, go ahead and use those links down in the description to the individual videos talking about these types.